All right, so the third and final controversy here that we're going to talk about, or the third segment here we're going to mention, is the idea of religion, and also not the idea of fundamentalism versus the idea of evolution, with social Darwinism that's taking place, or Darwinism that's taking place, I'm sorry, and evolution in the late 1800s with Charles Darwin. These are theories that are starting to now be kind of pushed. And backed by science in certain instances, and there's going to be some tension between that and certain religious communities as far as when it becomes to being taught in schools. So we're going to take a look at a famous trial that takes place, and it's going to be something that we really want to make sure that we understand here from this, because this is one of the more important cases of the 1920s. So again, the whole theme that we've talked about so far has been this divide between rural and urban America. And for the most part, the rural America is seen as more religious and especially more fundamental. And when you hear this religious fundamentalism, an easy interpretation of what that refers to is that somebody who might be religiously fundamental takes the Bible as a literal interpretation. So this will come into play when we talk about the creation story versus evolution, as far as how do we get here. And we already know that rural people, or rural Americans, are rejecting urban values, and that will be no different than when we get to religion, or the lack thereof, where rural America's, and we can see that even today, rural America is far more religious than urban America as a whole. TV or radio evangelicals will use the radio to broadcast messages, just like we see on TV today. We have TV evangelicals who go through and talk on Sundays, or even just during the week, and give speeches and give sermons and so forth to a large audience. So the idea of Darwinism, or the idea of evolution, is going to be rejected by a lot of rural Americans who are seen as fundamental Christians, who kind of grow up on the idea, or who believe in the idea that the earth was created in 7 days. And the idea of Darwinism kind of counters that, and there's going to be a friction between those two belief systems. And it will be seen in certain areas that the Bible will become outlawed in teaching the evolution, or I'm sorry, in teaching in schools, and then also in certain areas they don't want evolution to be taught as well. And it's going to come to a fruition, or it's going to come to a headway, where a teacher named John Scopes in Tennessee, again, Tennessee being a very kind of rural state at this point, being a very kind of conservative, or a very religious state compared to some other ones that are in the Union at this point. And John Scopes, in his bio class, is teaching the theory of evolution, which at this point is outlawed in the state of Tennessee. This is going to become known as the Scopes monkey trial. It became almost like the O.J. Simpson trial, which was seen as a national sensation, or a national headway newsline, where people were tuned in to see what was going to take place in the court case. You're going to have people from both sides who are serving, and major people who are serving to try to give representation to both sides, both the defenders and also the prosecutor. And the ACLU, a major organization, is going to come in to defend Scopes, and the idea of being able to use his freedom of speech to defend and to teach the idea of science, and to teach what had been believed with the theory of evolution and so forth, for the idea of how we got to where we are. And that's going to be countered by someone we've talked about in the past, William James Bryan, who's will serve as the prosecutor, and kind of represent more of the Christianity in the rural America. Think about, we talked about him, and he's very large in the rural community from the Populist Party movement during the Gilded Age. Essentially, the ending of the court case is going to be seen with Scopes being found guilty. By the court case, he was given a fine of, I believe, $100, which in the time period was not a small amount of money. I believe it was over $1,000 or so that he was fined in today's money. And even though that Scopes is found guilty, the people, the modernists, or the people who believe in the theory of evolution, felt that they had won, because through the court cases they were able to get William James Bryan, again the prosecutioner for the fundamentalist side, the anti-Scopes side, that he maybe did not believe, or he was not sure whether the world was actually made in the idea of creationism in the 6 days that it took within the day of rest on Sunday. So again, this is another example of headway, or of controversy taking place between two different versions of America. You have rural America on one hand, and you have urban America on the other, and through a series of social beliefs, through a series of religious beliefs, and also political beliefs as far as the Volstead Act, you have a growing divide that is going to be taking place throughout the 1920s. And again, we can see a lot of similarities in this to where we still have that way today, where you see a huge difference in the way America looks in urban cities versus rural areas like here. And the 1920s is definitely going to be seen as a time period of radical change, whether be economic change with the idea of the flapper movement, people trying to buy as many things as they can. This kind of superficial lifestyle is going to be for the first time, going to be promoted. And from a societal perspective, we have things like nativism, a fear of communism with the Red Scare, this growing fear of labor movements and unions. So we're changing economically, socially. We're also changing technologically, where automobiles, transportation is changing. The use of electricity is changing, especially in urban areas and major cities. The idea of what government's jobs are supposed to be. You have conflicting ideas as far as this return to normalcy with the conservative movement of the Republican Party during the 1920s versus the Progressive Party, what we had seen from both the Democrats and Republicans in the 19-teens and 1900s. So we have a huge amount of changes that are taking place here and causing controversy and causing strife amongst America at this point. It's going to come, eventually it will come to an end for a brief amount of time during the Great Depression when everybody's kind of in the same boat together. And then obviously with World War II kind of brings this national unity as well. But it's going to continue to thrive into the 1950s, 60s, and 70s with, again, the ideas of what is the role of government? What should society look like? And we can see these arguments still being had today from the two different political parties. So guys, I hope this was helpful. Again, come in with any questions that you have. Make sure you're ready for any kind of quiz that we might have with this topic, and I will see you next time.